What menopause reveals is the harvest of our lifestyle to that point, and including our red thread or mother line. So our female ancestral trauma that we inherit, whether we want to or not, will often play out in a rite of passage. It's an honor and a privilege to age. And here we are in this culture that's doing everything, encouraging everybody to do everything they can to avoid aging. And we probably can't ride the journey of menopause without modifying our lives. In the same way that you can't give birth to a baby and mother it without modifying your life.
Perimenopause and menopause are often framed as a problem to fix, and the conversation quickly collapses into a single question: HRT or not? But women's bodies are rarely that simple. In this episode, Jane, Hardwicke Collings and I explore a more expansive and grounded approach to the menopause transition. Rather than asking whether hormones are the right answer for everyone, we look at a deeper question: how can we support the complex physiological process the body is already moving through? Our conversation examines the growing tendency to position HRT as a universal solution for perimenopause symptoms, and how that pattern echoes earlier chapters in women's healthcare, when the pill was prescribed for nearly every hormonal concern, or when medical intervention became the default in birth. This is not an anti-HRT conversation. It's an invitation to widen the lens. We talk about the many systems that influence the menopause transition and why supporting the body's foundations can be just as important as the hormonal conversation itself. For some women, hormone replacement therapy may become a meaningful part of their path. For others, it may not. But reducing the entire transition to a single intervention risks overlooking the complexity and intelligence of the female body. Just as we've begun shifting the conversation around menstruation and birth toward working with the body instead of overriding it, it's time to bring that same perspective to menopause. Jane and I have recorded an extended conversation further exploring what she calls the red thread, one of my favorite topics. This is the mother line, the stories, experiences, and cellular imprint that gets passed from mother to daughter down through time. We share personal stories of our grandmothers, mothers, daughters, and granddaughters in relation to the rites of passage all girls and women undergo: menarche, birth, and menopause among them. As always, I hope these stories inspire you to look to your own family's stories for a deeper understanding of yourself and your lineage. That's at patreon.com/medicine stories. Our community has been growing there for over 8 years now, and I love being able to offer deeper insights into these conversations and to hear the reflections and stories of the women who support me there. I'm trying hard to not have to rely on outside ads to keep this podcast going, so if you find value in what I do here, please consider showing your appreciation with a $5 a month pledge. There's a ton of previous content waiting for you there, and I work hard to make it a good gathering place for like-minded women. Thank you. If you'd like to learn more from Jane, she has created an ongoing live online teaching path called The Womancraft Way that I have linked to in the show notes. Its purpose and mission is to offer support, guidance, and education to help women reclaim feminine knowledge, wisdom, and power, and to create a global community together. I wish I'd had this when I was younger, and I would love to see my daughters seek this knowledge. Although, as Jane and I discuss in the Patreon bonus, our daughters don't always want to follow in our footsteps. All right, without further ado, here's my conversation with Jane. Jane, thank you so much for joining me today. It's an honor to have you on Medicine Stories.
Oh, thank you, Amber, for inviting me.
Yes, I thought I would start with the question, what is on your heart today?
Oh, what is on my heart today is how I can best serve here with you and for your listeners on this very sensitive subject right now about how to navigate menopause.
Yes. So I am going to start, if I may, by sort of grounding our conversation. Given the very loud and divisive online noise that can surround this topic, I'd like to begin by anchoring this talk today in the principles guiding us here. And I'll speak for you at the outset because I've spent a lot of time considering your work on this topic, but feel free to let me know afterward if you disagree with anything. We don't question the value of a medicalized approach to menopause because we place a moral judgment on whether or not someone takes pharmaceuticals. I, for one, think that dogmatic natural healing purists miss the nuanced reality of having a human body just as often as the medical model enthusiasts that they rail so hard against. We question it because we're interested in the bodily wisdom that gets missed when symptoms are suppressed too quickly or for too long. And we also have no desire to see women suffer. And we acknowledge that HRT will be chosen by many women and will improve their quality of life. So for me, some of the women I love the most in the world swear by HRT, and I would never, ever look down on them or suggest that they stop taking it just because it's not natural. I adore them and I want to see them thriving. And at the same time, I just turned 45. I'm knee deep into years of metabolic repair work. And as I get further into perimenopause, I find myself questioning how HRT would affect the balance that I've worked so hard to attain, and wanting to have more nuanced conversations around this topic, especially because it is so polarizing online and all the gray area seems to get erased.
Which, to be fair, is a pattern.
Yes.
The same thing happens in the menstrual cycle and childbirth.
Yes, I love that you've pointed that out. It makes so much sense. Putting this in like a larger socio-historical context, this moment we're in of the...
Yeah, I think that's really important because, with the childbirth, the history of childbirth, there was a lot of intervention and medicalization. Then there was a kind of a revolution and the natural birth movement began. And then there was kickback to that. And then there's polarization and judgment and all the things. Likewise with the menstrual cycle and contraception. So there is a potential for a divide about what kind of treatment women choose for themselves in any of our natural processes. And, we've got to stop this divide. It doesn't help anybody, and it just encourages and continues the wounded sisterhood of some thinking that they do better than others or have the right idea and others don't and all that kind of stuff. Because the truth of the matter is that with all of our natural bodily processes, there will be a portion of women, and it will be a minority if it's used properly, that require medical assistance, with the menstrual cycle, with childbirth and with menopause. But the situation we see now is just this either or.
Exactly. And that's why I was so drawn to your work on this topic, because I've been wanting to talk about it for a while, but I'm always here for the nuance in these conversations, and I wasn't seeing anybody else speaking to the nuance on HRT. So thank you again so much for being here. Can you explain? Actually, let's start by defining perimenopause and menopause and how you use them.
Well, therein lay the first problem. It's such a medicalized term. No one understands what it is. There's premenopause, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. Peri means around. So menopause means last period. So it's basically the brackets around the last period that is, you never know when it's going to be. And I feel like the language we use around this is part of the problem. And for example, as I said, nobody really knows what's going on and who says what and what makes sense. So actually, I've decided to rename it. Now, I've renamed it in keeping with the other major transformations that we have in our lives, the rites of passage of our menarche, our first period in adolescence, and then the rites of passage of birthing, childbirth, and matrescence, which is not that new. That term came to us in the 1970s from a woman called Dana Raphael, but it's just catching on. Where are we, 50 years on? But that's kind of how long it takes. So adolescence, matrescence, and the sense bit means becoming in a new state. So my new name for all the post, present menopause is sagescence, the becoming a wise woman. And I feel like that's so helpful in understanding what actually is going on rather than medicalizing it. And so, but that's one of the things that happens in our culture, or has happened and continues to happen, that all our natural bodily processes, menstrual cycle, childbirth, and menopause, have all been pathologized, medicalized, weaponized against us, and monetized. So here with this whole menopause situation, in 2030, which is actually really close, like 3 and a bit years now, there will be 1.2 billion menopausal women on the planet. So that's a huge market. And we live in a capitalist culture, and it's all about making money, and there are a lot of people who are already making a lot of money out of menopausal women and who are planning and continuing to do so. So we can't separate that out too of the situation. So I feel like the most important thing we can do is to actually put menopause in her rightful place in our lives. It's not some random disease that you can avoid. It's the beginning of the second half of our life. It's the shift from the summer, productive, fertile season when we're on, and we're doing everything for everybody, to the beginning of autumn or fall where everything changes. And I'm sure we'll get into that as to what actually happens that makes the change. But in terms of what I see peri meaning, it means before and after the last period, which is what menopause is. And then post-menopause is diagnosed, which again, I think is like the wrong approach to a natural process. Like you do get diagnosed pregnant, which is a ridiculous thing anyway. All you have to do is pay attention to your body and notice what's changed, and we can tell we're pregnant. We don't need to be diagnosed as pregnant, although that seems to be part of the pattern as well. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, thank you. I'm still never sure exactly which term to use, but since both perimenopausal women and menopausal women who have stopped cycling use HRT, I think we can use both or either for this conversation.
Yes, totally. Yeah, it's the entire group of women, whether they still have a menstrual cycle or not, and then after, that are using HRT. That's correct.
Yeah.
And look, to be fair, that's been renamed and rebranded. The HRT for menopause is now called MHT, menopause hormone therapy. So it's had a little bit of a rebrand.
Okay. I saw that in your post. I didn't know what it meant, MHT. So can you explain to me how perimenopause and menopause is not simply a period of hormones declining, but really a complex recalibration process?
Yeah. So that's exactly what it is, a complex recalibration process. It's like a reset. And basically everything changes because our hormone levels change. Our hormone profile changes. Now, our hormone profile is the levels of hormones. And whatever our hormone profile is, informs our behavior, our desires, our energy level, what we long for, what we will do, what we won't do, how we behave, and how we kind of identify ourselves within the cycle of our lives. So at menopause, around sage essence, so probably like 5 years before the last period, give or take 3 or 4, because the bottom line here is like it's not the same for everybody, in the same way that childbirth's not the same for everybody. There's a process, but then each individual has their unique experience, because our experience of our shifting in hormones and, decline has such a negative connotation, like it's bad, but the hormone levels change and they do go down, but down's not bad, it's just down. Up's not good, it's just up, So we've got to be careful how we judge these words as well, because they're so powerful, Language, every word is a spell, so we have to be really mindful of how we use them. But at some point before your last period, which again, you never know when that's going to happen. Like there's so many things we never know, right? We never know when our period is going to come for the first time. We never know when the baby's going to be born. We never know when our last breastfeed is going to be, unless we plan it. And we never know when our last period is going to be, unless you have a surgical menopause or a chemical menopause, and then it happens straight away. So back to what happens. The first thing that happens is that we don't ovulate every menstrual cycle. Now, to even know that that's the sign to look for, women need to be able to tell when they ovulate. And I'm so sad to know that it would probably be the majority of women who have no connection to their menstrual cycle whatsoever and have got no idea how to even tell if they ovulate or even know if they have. So a big piece in this story is that women's fears and worries about menopause would be alleviated, a lot of them, if they had already been connected to their menstrual cycle, which is the teacher of us. Like, it runs our life, our menstrual cycle, and everybody who lives under the same roof as us. So the menstrual cycle is meant to teach us cycle intelligence and body literacy that we then go into childbirth with, understanding that our body is amazing and does all these incredible things. And then through our experiences of childbirth, we arrive at menopause trusting our body and the process. But as I said, that's really not what's going on. And the biggest problem has been the disconnection from the menstrual cycle, because it's the continuum. Menopause is the continuum of that. It's the menarche, and the menstrual cycle is like the beginning, and the fertility cycle, and then menopause is the end of it. And they are completely related. So first thing is, you don't ovulate every cycle. And so that's because our progesterone levels go down. That's the first thing that happens. And progesterone is a mild sedative. And we might never have realized we were mildly sedated when we were fertile, but we definitely realize when we are no longer mildly sedated, when the progesterone levels go down. And progesterone also keeps a lid on everything. Keeps us calm, keeps us doing everything and blah, blah, blah. But when progesterone declines, that lid goes away and all our unresolved trauma arises. Now, most women have no idea that that's going to happen. Imagine if you did know that was going to happen. You could not only prepare for it by having done the inner work already, but you could go, oh, here we are. Yes, now I need to deal with that sexual trauma that I experienced as a teenager, or the traumatic childbirth experience I had, or tend to my wounded inner child. So when this progesterone goes away and this lid opens with all that stuff rising, it would be a good idea to know that that's coming, rather than when it does and everyone just thinks, oh my God, I'm going crazy. So that's what happens first. And then estrogen goes through a process of coming down, but it goes up and down and then down and like it's quite a and as it goes up and down, depends. This is the thing that pretty much creates the symptoms. Again, another word that's just so inappropriate for menopause, because diseases have symptoms, not natural processes. So more like it's our physical experiences of menopause. So there are estrogen receptors everywhere in the body. So as the estrogen levels go down, each part of the body that is functioning because of the estrogen levels is going to function differently. So that's the process of coming to a new hormone profile. And estrogen, as it goes down, has a huge effect on us, not just with the symptoms, like the neurological symptoms, the physical symptoms, all of that. But estrogen is known as the hormone of accommodation and self-sacrifice, or the nurturing hormone, or it's the one that makes us prioritize everybody else's needs above our own. And, that's kind of gets turned into like a people-pleasing scenario. It has us say things like, oh, we're running late. You go ahead. I'll stay home and clean up, and I'll join you when I can. Or, oh, there's all these strawberries left. Would you like some? I know I haven't had any, but here, you have them. It's that kind of self-sacrifice. So as that hormone goes down, so too does the inclination to behave like that. And that can be pretty shocking, not just to the woman, but to everybody around her. Like, what's wrong with you? You were okay yesterday, and now you're like cranky about me leaving my washing on the ground again. So the change that happens within the woman, if she has no idea that this is going to happen, like, it's kind of like a no-brainer that she would think something is wrong with me. I'm not behaving how I used to behave. I'm upsetting everybody. So, what can I do to change this? Instead of working with it, because the healing opportunities that are presented through that whole process are gigantic.
Do you think that modern women, I mean, it sure seems like it online, but maybe that's just because we're all online. But I do think maybe there's something to it that modern women are having a harder time with perimenopause and menopause because of the onslaught of modern living. And here in the States, it's 88% of people are metabolically unwell. And that I think that speaks to like the larger picture that you're looking at here is there's so much to this complex physiological process. And if we're not already in a state of robust metabolic health, we're going to have a harder time. And I think more women are in that state now than at any time in the past, it seems to me. But maybe it's just because our grandmothers didn't have podcasts and Instagram to talk about menopause on.
Exactly. And menopause gets blamed for so many things, like not so much the metabolic disorders, because that would have already been started, right? But menopause reveals things. And so then gets blamed for it. Like, any bodily disease, like a cardiovascular disease or any sort of neurological thing or a mental health thing and other physical things, menopause doesn't cause them. It reveals them at their next level. So the thing about menopause, and I hear you as to, maybe it's just too hard now because of the modern woman's life and the estrogen disruptors in the environment and all of that kind of thing. However, I think it's more than that or less than that. Like, I don't think we can blame the culture and the environment on the difficulties we are experiencing accepting aging, physical decline, and everything that menopause brings for us to notice. Because actually what menopause reveals is the harvest of our lifestyle to that point. So, and including our red thread or mother line. So our female ancestral trauma that we inherit whether we want to or not will often play out in a rite of passage. Like, there's patterns, like just back to menarche, mothers usually initiate their daughters into womanhood in the same way they were, which most likely was pretty much nothing, unless they wake up and want to do something better for their daughters. And that's happening more and more now, right? So that's awesome. Childbirth, there's a big divide still, and it's getting worse, to be fair. Right now in Australia, which is just a good example or bad example, whichever way you want to judge it, of modern obstetric practices, less than 50% of women, I think it's like 47 or 48% of women, actually push their babies out of their vaginas now. That's ridiculous. That is a sign of way excessive intervention and causes all manner of problems, as you can imagine. And it sure shows up at menopause because, women, see, the thing about menopause, like childbirth, like menarche, is it's a rite of passage. And the way rites of passage work is that whatever happens at a rite of passage or doesn't happen, who's there, what they say, what they don't say, is that it all adds up to teach you on a subliminal level how your culture, our culture, values the next role you're going into. So at menarche, that's womanhood. At childbirth, that's motherhood. And at menopause, that's our wise woman years. Now, our culture does not value wise women. And in fact, something super cool is that in cultures that do value elder women, they don't have menopausal symptoms. They just are growing into them, their awesome, powerful elder selves. So the thing is that one rite of passage leads to the next. So if someone's had traumatic childbirth experiences that has taught them, my body doesn't work, I'm broken, I need medical intervention to even go into labor, or I can't handle the pain, or I can't like all the things that the system reinforces not working in a woman to deliver her safely. Now, again, as I said, there'll be some women who need this help, but most do not. But when intervention happens unnecessarily, it leads to what's known in the business as the cascade of intervention. You know, you mess up one thing, you have to probably do intervention to keep going. And you know, that's what happens to childbirth. So the majority of women are not having empowering experiences of birth. So they don't arrive at menopause trusting their body or the process. They arrive at menopause knowing whatever their experience taught them. My body doesn't work, I'm broken, I can't handle it, blah, blah, blah. So that leads to a lot of what's going on in menopause, as opposed to the modern woman just by her nature, because her nature is intact. It's just buried deep inside her, and she's been taught to ignore it. So I don't think we can just say everybody's just having a hard time now because of pollution and stress. Yes, that will contribute, of course, but it's her history that's playing out here, not just the environmental factors. So I think that is one of the most important things for women to realize, that everything that happens at menopause is actually no surprise. Because if you have been tracking your life rather than bumbling along, if you know your previous rites of passage and what they taught you, if you've been in communication with your body and all the things, then you know what's going to happen at menopause. There's no surprises. It's all the things that are so difficult for us that come up in menopause are the things we've probably been ignoring our whole adult life that really do need our attention to either stop, change, or heal. And so how this arises is within the symptoms, for example. So, you know, 80% of women have hot flushes, or hot flashes as they're called in America. And, you know, so that's an effect of estrogen declining and the effect on the temperature control situation in your head and all of that. Now, that's just a process that happens, and how you are with it is the actual thing. You know, it's a bit like how you are with a contraction in labor. Like the contraction's going to happen, and how you navigate it, how you are with it, is going to be your experience. So same with hot flushes, same with everything associated with menopause. And just as an example of my own experience, so I navigated 8 years of hot flushes, quite intense ones, before I realized that I was enduring my hot flushes. Like the hot flush would come and I would just like sit there and endure it. And like I didn't even realize I was doing that until 8 years of doing it. And when I noticed that, so this is an example of the healing opportunities of just a hot flush and how you navigate it, how you are with it, that realizing it unraveled the next level and next layer of my inner child trauma, where I realized that due to some terrible medical trauma I had as a little 4-year-old, I had ever since been like this. But I didn't even notice that. I was just me, right? But then that showed up through my experience of hot flushes 8 years after my last period.
I think a lot about how womanhood moves in seasons. We're always being invited forward through transitions, initiations, and quiet interchanges. But the modern world doesn't always make space for the deeper knowing inside us. So I created a quiz called Find Your Wise Woman Archetype. It's a way of listening for the voice of the wise woman within you, the part that offers guidance, healing, and insight for the path you're walking right now, and for what or who is beckoning you forward. When you finish the quiz, you'll discover your archetype, along with mythic stories and plant allies that can support you on the journey home to yourself. It's quick and fun, and you can find it at mythicmedicine.shop. While you're there, check out our Rites of Passage herbal medicine support bundles. From first blood through pregnancy, matrescence, perimenopause, and menopause, to the final breath. These herbal medicines are meant to be companions through every threshold. Each blend invites remembrance of the rites and rituals once shared among women, gifted in celebration or taken quietly in solitude as an act of self-honoring. That's mythicmedicine.shop, and the link is in the show notes. Thank you for supporting our small family business. It's like what arises at menopause is the end point of a lifetime of the cascade of intervention.
That's it. And whatever you inherited from your red thread coming through you as the latest story of that, which can be gigantic.
Absolutely. That's one of my favorite topics to explore is what we inherit from our mothers and grandmothers and in all areas of life. And thinking too about the rites of passage and menarche. I'm always interested in how people pronounce that word differently. Yeah. Now I'm wondering if it's an Australia, America thing. But my herb teacher, Cammie McBride, a few months ago on my podcast talked about how when we don't mark menarche as a rite of passage for our girls, as something important, because we know as girls when that happens, we know how important it is. When that's not reflected back to us by the culture or anyone close to us, we think, oh, well, okay, if that's not important, then nothing is important.
That's it.
I'll let myself be violated by this guy and it doesn't matter because it's not important because my body's not important. And like going through this lifelong cascade of medical interventions, including childbirth, like you said, no wonder we get to perimenopause and menopause and we're a mess.
Totally. So that's a really important and that way to see it, because that's the big picture. It's not seeing it as some isolated incident. It's the culmination of our fertility. It's the end story of, if you're healthy, 40 years of fertility and not a disease. Yes, it's a hormonal change, if we want to make it negative and say decline, but something super interesting is that when that process settles down and we have our, and I'm when I do this, I'm mimicking the graph of what happens to estrogen. When that all settles down, our hormone profile post-menopause, like when it's all settled down, is the same as it was pre-menarche. So that is a lovely clue for women over what am I going to be like? Who am I going to be like? What's going to matter to me when I'm post-menopause? Is to reflect on who you were before you started bleeding, before you were enculturated into how you have to behave as a woman to be accepted in this culture, which is usually like, carry on regardless, don't show any weakness, business as usual, and whatever you do, don't leak or you will shame us all. So prior to that enculturation or brainwashing, who were you? Most likely a teenager, or maybe for some it happens even younger than that, fighting for animal rights and wanting to be a vegetarian and whatever. So the passion and the fullness of that time, and again, I'm talking in the healthy supported model because obviously there will be many girls who are not having that experience, but that's who you re-become at Sage Essence, but much more streetwise and like 40 years of experience and body knowledge and wisdom and life. So, and our dominant sex hormone post-menopause is testosterone, which is in and of itself something confusing for most women because they think it's a male hormone. But, we have it. Men have estrogen as well. So it's just one of the sex hormones. But what that leads to is postmenopausally, a woman who speaks her mind, testosterone is like the yang out there-ness of us that we would associate with masculine behavior, all of which females can do, obviously. It's not just the way men behave. And so postmenopausally, in a healthy, supported way, women speak their mind much more. Women are oriented to themselves, possibly for the first time in their adult life. And all the hormonal changes have so many gifts, like clarity of thought, long-term thinking, solution-focused thinking, So what we're losing through this medical management of menopause by using hormones to stop symptoms are the processes that the women will go through in navigating the symptoms and what that helps them heal or learn about themselves. And everybody will have their own journey, and we all need to honor and respect that. Like, that's the bottom line. Everybody's on their path. Where else would they be? Everybody makes the right decision for themselves. What else would they be doing? And still, it's important for everybody to know that menopause is a natural process, like childbirth, like the menstrual cycle. And so that it has within it there's a map of what will happen. And understanding and the map and using the map can make it better, make it easier, and increase the wellness opportunities, the healing opportunities, the experience. Like in the same way that, say, someone who has described their experience of childbirth, where they, for example, flow with the natural process of their body and work with the pain and their body and work with the baby and end up going into an altered state of consciousness because of that, and then give birth, and they're like, oh my God, wow. You know, like that's what we want for menopausal women as well, because women who need medical management or choose medical management for their childbirth do not actually have the same experience as those who flow with the natural process of their bodies. Like, you know, that's just absolute. It's not to devalue someone's experience of a medical childbirth, but it's very different to natural childbirth. It's not to say, like, it's the same way as somebody who has a normal period, like a period, they have their menstrual cycle, compared to somebody who's on the pill, controlling their menstrual cycle, which the pill is HRT.
Right. It's hormone
replacement.
Is it hormone replacement therapy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
As are all hormonal contraceptives.
So that's why this new MHT, because it's a little more specific to the phase of life.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow, it's so interesting to think that most of us have about 40 years of cycling. You know, that's a lot. That's like you said, the menstrual cycle, it really dominates our lives. Totally.
And like to even get to menopause and to go through menopause and then enter your however old you are, you know, the second half of your life, and to age, that's a privilege. It's not a guarantee. It's an honor and a privilege to age. And here we are in this culture that's doing everything, encouraging everybody to do everything they can to avoid aging, to stay in this Peter Pan, youthful beauty as per youth world, which is not sustainable. We know that. And yet here we get sucked into this anti-aging thing, which limits everybody's experience and implies that aging is bad. Like everybody is going to age. You can't not.
There's no such thing as anti-aging. And the next time you're feeling bummed about it, think about the people you know who didn't have the chance to age. That flips your perspective really quickly.
Totally. And around my age here, you know, I'm 67, turning 68 soon. Many of my, you know, people I've known my whole life who are around the same age are not doing so well. You know, some are dead already, some are dying, and it's really like everybody's like, oh, I'm still okay kind of thing, you know. So like we have to get aging into perspective. It's a gift.
Yes.
And as we age, we have much more to offer the community.
Right. It's like, you know, so we're not as people pleasing. Once we're postmenopausal, we're through the hormonal ups and downs. Like you said, there's more testosterone. I've heard a lot of postmenopausal women describe it as a period of freedom, really, from all of that. And, you know, the grandmother hypothesis, I assume.
Exactly.
Yes, that most mammals do not live, they're fertile until they die, but we have these decades of post-fertility in which to contribute back to society. And it's called the grandmother hypothesis because in tribal living, we would mostly be doing that by helping tend to the younger children in the village.
And are you aware about the whales?
Yes, the toothed whales that are matriarchal.
That's right. Yeah. So there are only 5 creatures on the planet that go through menopause. That's human women and beluga whales, pilot whales, orca, and narwhals, the toothed whales. And so when evolutionary biologists were trying to figure out why do human women live beyond their fertility, what could possibly be the use of them, they looked to nature and found that these toothed whales also went through menopause. Their fertility stopped and they're still there. And what they found was that these post-fertility grandmother whales were the leaders of the pod. And if they weren't there, the pod goes to shit. And they, along this grandmother hypothesis thing, the presence of the grandma leader means her grandchildren survive better and longer. Her daughters have more babies, and she keeps her sons out of fights. So the community, the pod, the wellness of the pod, the harmony within the pod is determined by the presence of the grandmother.
Most of us, certainly people listening to my podcast, we yearn for that. We yearn for that societal structure. And as much as like the overculture does degrade older women, you know, the archetype of the hag, so many of us are actually craving the elders and the wise, loving grandmothers that we are missing on a cultural scale.
That's it.
Yeah.
And the culture is actively trying to, not trying, I don't know if they're trying, they're just making money, you know, but to reduce the efficacy of the wise woman by keeping her from going through that rite of passage. Now, HRT doesn't stop you going through the rite of passage, but it stops you experiencing the symptoms. And it doesn't work for everybody. And there's contraindications. Migraines. If you're a migraine sufferer, it's a contraindication for MHT.
I want to tell you about something really special that I'm hosting this fall. In November 2026, I'm leading the Healing Waters Nature Immersion Retreat, a week for rest, nourishment, and togetherness. Women have always moved through life carrying so much responsibility, living out our own private and often invisible heroines' journeys, engaging in the sacred but tiring work of caring for others. And this is why we have also always gathered in circles, across generations and life stages, to share wisdom, to tend to one another, and to remember who we are. This retreat is an invitation back into that kind of space. We'll spend our days immersed in the lush beauty of a Costa Rican national park, nourishing our bodies with good food that we didn't have to cook ourselves, resting deeply, and being together the way that women have always loved to do. If this is calling to you, you can learn more at the link in the show notes. I would be honored to share this circle with you. My question, and I haven't researched this, but maybe you know, is like, what is the long game? At what point do you stop taking them, and what happens to you then?
Yeah, exactly. Right question. So, you know, when MHT was HRT, like before the rebrand, it was, you know, little different cocktails and whatnot, but obviously some similar and the same kind of principles. The idea was that it was only for severe circumstances and to be taken for as short as possible time, maximum 5 years. And then when you go off it, you've got to go through the hormone change and the whole thing. So, like, there you go, number one. Wouldn't it be better to do it when it's happening, when you're younger and healthier or whatever, rather than wait to then? I don't know, maybe. But now they're saying that you can stay on it forever. Now, when you do that, you become a patient who has to have blood tests and doctor's checkups to make sure that the side effects are not happening from the synthetic hormones that you're taking. And it costs money, all of that. You know, you become a cog in the wheel of the medicalization of menopause. So again, comes back to that situation of perhaps it would be better to go through the natural process when your body is ready to do it. Like just arcing back to childbirth then, we know for a baby, it's best for a baby that they initiate labor rather than have an induction, because babies actually initiate labor, and they do so when they have produced a thing, favorite menopausal word for a menopausal woman word, thing, called surfactant, which indicates their lungs are mature and they'll be able to breathe. So, it's better for a baby to be born when they're ready to be born. So menopause, would it be better to go through the process when your body's ready to go through it rather than postpone it because it's not convenient or it's annoying or you can't maintain your lifestyle? That's the point. You're not supposed to maintain an unhealthy lifestyle. Menopause is like this reckoning. Can I keep drinking this amount of wine every night? Can I keep getting away with eating these sweet foods all the time I want? Can I keep going without exercising? Can I keep going in this messed up relationship? Like everything that's not working in your life shows up so you can change it. But if we put a lid on it, we just keep going.
It reminds me of a comment that was on your Instagram that I wanted us to talk about. As a doula, mother, sister, aunt, and student midwife, I still find myself asking the same question. Why are we still endeavoring to numb, halt, stop, and pretend that significant, life-changing hormonal shifts can be manipulated, reversed, or simply eradicated? Surely there is a reason women's bodies go through such a huge change. It frustrates me that we live in a world where women still have to rock up, show up, and be sharp when our bodies are desperately seeking calm, quiet, slow, and gentle rhythms. Our biology is literally forcing women to take stock, recalibrate, and change tack, yet the medical world seems focused on manipulating this process to keep pushing on. I don't know about anyone else, but I'm so tired of fighting my body's needs.
Like, I hear you, sister. And that's really the thing, that like she encapsulated the issue. And, we live in a patriarchal culture that honors youth and beauty, 24/7 availability and growth, and is not into cycles at all. It's just about keeping on going and growing. Every corporation has new growth targets every year. There is no rest. Rest, as Uma Dunsmore Tully says, rest is a revolutionary act. And with the reckoning that menopause offers us, it offers us a look at our lifestyle to notice what is not working, what's hurting us, what's damaging us, what's having us feel exhausted or annoyed all the time or whatever. So, I think an interesting thing to add at this point is that in the menstrual cycle, so this is not if you're on hormonal contraception of any kind, because you don't have a menstrual cycle if you are. But in the normal natural menstrual cycle, week 3 of the menstrual cycle, which is the first half of the luteal phase, which is the second half of the menstrual cycle, which goes from ovulation to bleeding. In week 3 of our menstrual cycle, which is like our inner autumn or inner fall, it's like the prequel of perimenopause, because estrogen goes down during that week 3 of the menstrual cycle. And this has already been pathologized. It's called PMS or PMT or what. It's that when women no longer comply, basically. So that means it's something wrong with us because we were complying before, but now we're not complying, so there's something wrong with us. And actually what it is, it's the time of truth-telling, because the people-pleasing thing drops down and we start to think, hang on, this is not working for me. And then, we withdraw, and then we have the second half of our luteal phase, and then we bleed, and then we start again with feeling good for the, on high estrogen on the way up and low estrogen on the way down. So learning how to be in week 3 of our menstrual cycle in a way where we don't blame everybody else is good practice for the rite of passage of menopause.
That's where I'm at right now. And it's one of my favorite times of my cycle, actually. Weeks 1 and 3 are great.
Well, you'll be right then.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, okay, maybe this bodes well. Okay, I wanted to go back to, so we had the pill, right? When the pill first comes out, it is for contraception, but over the decades, it becomes a cure-all for every woman's hormonal issue. And we've done a good job of educating ourselves and each other over the past decade or so on, the risks of using the pill for everything. And so the way you're describing how MHT is now being used indefinitely instead of for a short period of time, like I'm seeing that it's the same trajectory, right? This one intervention is now like the end all be all. And here you are, changing the culture bit by bit, like we did around hormonal birth control, menarche, childbirth. We can start to have the same conversation around menopause.
Yeah, because it's connected.
It's connected. It's all connected. It's an ongoing 3-word phrase that I say all the time on this podcast. It's all everything I talk about, everything, it's all connected.
Yeah. And just that awareness is gigantic, because in our culture, we wouldn't know that.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. Okay, so I guess I'm curious, can you think of a circumstance where you think, yeah, this probably is actually the right choice for someone?
Totally. Absolutely. So women who have surgical menopause, which is their ovaries are taken out.
Yes. A dear friend of mine had cervical cancer, and the radiation immediately put her into menopause when she was in her early 40s.
Okay. So that's chemical menopause.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So it can also be for sometimes estrogen blocking drugs are given for tumors, because estrogen makes things grow. So there's chemical menopause, and then there's surgical menopause when the ovaries are removed. Women can have a hysterectomy, their womb removed, but if their ovaries are still in, they'll still go through their cycle and have a natural menopause or whatever, depends how they navigate it, but there won't be any blood because they haven't got a womb. But their ovaries are still going. But when their ovaries are taken out, or chemical menopause, and like your friend you just said, they go instantly into, there's no first progesterone going down and then estrogen. It's just like it's splat.
There's no peri.
There's no peri. There's just bang into it. And that is the equivalent to that is an induction of labor, where all of a sudden, bang, you're in labor. So you don't have that slow, steady build up in frequency and intensity of the contractions. It's just bang, you're in it. And that's I know women who have navigated that without pain relief, and it's very intense. So same for, that would be a time when I would think that MHT would be useful and very helpful, but to mimic this coming down rather than to just keep you up somewhere. But then depending on your age, like if you had surgical or chemical or premature menopause in your 30s, say, then perhaps HRT is the thing that you need, MHT is the thing that you need to navigate until you get to the time when you are ready to reduce the hormones and go through that process. And also women who have histories of trauma in their lives the effect of that is on their nervous system. And so that they have increased severity of the neurological symptoms of menopause, as do women with ADHD. So actually our experience of sage essence, the peri and the whole thing, is more a readout of the state of our nervous system, the state of our adrenal glands, and the load currently on our liver. and our diet. Like we have to have enough fiber in our diet to actually excrete the estrogen that we're lowering, because it lowers, but it only lowers if you get rid of it. And the liver plays a big role in that by putting the estrogen that we don't need anymore into bile, and then you pass it out with your feces. But if you're not eating enough roughage and that's not working properly, you reabsorb it. So it's not like it's a whole body system response to the hormonal changes. It's just not one thing. So like using HRT to stop a hot flush is like to my mind, is like using the oral contraceptive pill for acne. It's like way too much for something that is being affected by so many other things. Like, for example, hot flushes can reduce dramatically if women stop drinking caffeine, stop drinking alcohol, and reduce their stress. But the caffeine, the coffee, and the alcohol, just stopping or, reducing, but stopping is better, has a huge effect on the experience of the severity of some of the symptoms of menopause. And that doesn't make any money. That actually saves money.
I think about like women in very low energy states, chronic fatigue, chronic illness, and just really, really sensitive systems that are not generating a lot of cellular energy, that it might be too much for them to go through. I can just see that as a place where HRT could help. I don't know enough about it, and I haven't thought enough about it, so I want to make my ignorance very clear. But I'm really curious because I'm at an age now where everyone around me is talking about it. So I want.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, it's very heavy-handed as a treatment. Yeah, because it changes the hormone profile, and you change the hormone profile, and you change your behavior. You change who you are, change what you will be prepared to do and not prepared to do. And, I know a lot of the MHT is in small doses, but when I've done my research, it's the small doses that it increases are equivalent to more like the experience of mid-cycle follicular or mid-cycle luteal, where there's kind of a bit of, harmony sort of, as opposed to the opposites, like the high of ovulation and the low of bleeding. And I'm not saying low is bad, right? The low of bleeding is necessary, but the HRT brings it to an equivalent of somewhere in between all of that. And, for women with really sensitive systems, that could be too much as well. So it's an experiment and something to be monitoring. If you choose to do it, you want to be doing it with full awareness of what you're doing and the effects it's going to have, and how to notice whether it's working or not working, and be guided by a practitioner who's looking at it from a holistic perspective, not just the levels of your hormones, because we are all much more than just the levels of our hormones. And there are a lot more contributing factors that are influencing the level of our hormones and stuff. So I think the most important thing for anybody wondering, what am I going to do, is to just not go for full medical control first, because there could be lots of other things you could do beforehand that will take it to the level where it's okay, and you navigate the process and you come out at the other end. Like lifestyle changes, your world of wise woman healing, like, the herbs that women have used forever to navigate our lives are very useful around menopause, as they are within the menstrual cycle. So there's so many other things to do before the heavy-handed lid on it.
Yes. Look, I'm going to harp on things I always do. Eating enough, making sure you're getting enough caloric energy and micronutrients through the food you're eating to support the changes your body is going through. For me, I recently got lab work done for the first time in years and found out that my iron was functionally depleted. I'm not going to be doing well until I get my iron levels up, no matter what else I try to do.
Exactly.
Just basics like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So rather than what's your estrogen level, what's your progesterone level, what can we do to bring it up to the point where you'll stop having hot flushes or insomnia or brain fog or whatever, all of which are temporary. That's the other thing. If we remember it's temporary, then maybe we can ride it. And we probably can't ride the journey of menopause without modifying our lives. In the same way that you can't give birth to a baby and mother it without modifying your life.
Yeah.
And that's the point. It's the time in your life when it's time to modify your life and make it suit you.
Yeah. And look for the gifts in that, because there are going to be many of them.
Many.
I was thinking about your story of your hot flashes, and it reminded me of the difference between my two labors, which in the first one, when a contraction came on really strong, it's like I was trying to leave my body. You know, the energetic response to me was like to go up and out and like avoid it. And with my second, I knew down and in when that intensity washes over me. And it was a 17 versus a 4-hour labor.
There you go. So to work, I think that holds the message. You know, we hopefully, and obviously not actually, we've learned to work with our body by the time we get to menopause. And then it's just like, okay, now here comes another hot flush. One of the things that you can use it for is, what was I thinking before that hot flush that I need to burn away? You know, like there's so much goodness in it, in the same way that working with your body in childbirth can completely change the experience. And I'm sure that was a very empowering experience for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel really lucky to have found wise elder women when I was in my early 20s who set me on the path of understanding my menstrual cycle and endeavoring to have natural childbirths, not because, I want to say this again too, not because I have any moral purity judgments around natural versus unnatural, but because when we let our bodies follow their natural course that they've been designed through countless generations of women to do, it tends to go better for us.
Yeah, that's it. That's the thing we need to remember. We've learned that from childbirth. The safest way for a baby to be born and the safest way for a woman to navigate birth is naturally. Like, unless she has pre-existing conditions, that will inhibit the process. But that shouldn't be very many women.
And when it is, thank goodness for modern medicine.
Thank goodness. When we need medicine, we give great thanks. But when we don't, and when it's either encouraged or even forced on us, everything goes haywire.
There will be consequences.
There will be consequences. That's it.
Jane, thank you so much. I know your words, your writings, your teachings, your speakings have just blessed countless thousands of women. And I'm so grateful. And thank you for talking to me today. Okay, you can head over to the Medicine Stories Patreon for an extended conversation between Jane and I about the lineages that we carry within us, that we carry in our ovaries, in our blood, in our wombs and hearts, and how those stories, those experiences, those cellular imprints affect us as we go through our own seasons of womanhood.
Our red thread motherline female ancestry really affects us, you know, big time. It can't not.
Not to mention the mitochondrial DNA that we inherit.
Exactly.
Only from our mothers.
Yeah.
Literally the, quote, powerhouse of the cell, literally the heartbeat of every cell in our bodies came down to us from our ancient grandmother, mother.
And that's been alive the whole time.
What a blessing and a privilege to be a woman. It's a lot, but oh my God, we get to give birth. We get to carry on our ancestral lines. We get to have our grandbabies in our wombs, in our daughters' ovaries. We get to heal things if we want to for our grandmothers, for our granddaughters. It's just such an incredible blessing and privilege, even though it's very complicated and messy and frustrating sometimes.
And we live in a culture that puts all of that down.
You can find more from Jane at The Womancraft Way. All these links are in the show notes. You can also learn more about the Costa Rican retreat, Healing Waters, Nature Immersion Women's Retreat coming up this November. We're going to be in Earth and Hot Springs. That's why I chose this itinerary more than anything else. Let's get back into the womb of the earth together, okay? Share our stories in the warm mineral water. Mythicmedicine.shop is where you can find our many herbal medicines, extra potent elderberry elixir, St. John's wort oil. That's a great time of year for our herbal breast oil and our violet leaf castor oil. So exciting that spring is finally here. And check out our really fun quiz too. I try to make my quizzes light, playful, fun, and quick, because I know you have a busy life. So find your inner wise woman archetype over there at mythicmedicine.shop as well. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you next time.